Action News. Now, your table is ready. Join 1380C's Jeff Smith with the decision makers of Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. This is the Roundtable.
And hi there, good afternoon. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here on this Sunday afternoon. I'm Jeff Smith here on the Roundtable, and the man who is my guest this afternoon is somebody who has his name linked to some of the places you may have passed driving around downtown Toledo this week. If you're new to the area, the Huntington Center and also Fifth Third Field, linchpins of Toledo's downtown, are the results of a lot of hard work and effort, blood, sweat, and tears, I think we can safely say.
That's
from
true.
Mr. Tom Chema, welcome back to the Toledo area. We appreciate you being here, now president of Hiram College, just east of Cleveland. Thank you for spending some time with us.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be back in Toledo.
You keep tabs on things here, you do, right?
I sure do. I have an investment here,
Yeah.
and it was that blood, sweat, and tears type of investment. Those were wonderful opportunities that we had at Gateway to work with folks in Toledo, had great associations with county commissioners and the mayors and the business community here, and of course the sports teams.
We're going to hear more from one of those county commissioners who you dealt with in just a moment. One of the things I enjoy here at 13 ABC is I get your newsletter occasionally here at work, and one a couple of months ago really grabbed my attention. This man sitting across from me has quite a busy schedule, so we were lucky to get him, but it came out a couple of months ago. And Tom, I really wanted to get you here on two fronts, not only to talk about your view of Toledo development and where things stand from an economic standpoint in our second segment, but also what you put in this newsletter that grabbed my attention. 3 different topic areas, and people are looking at them at home, but you struck a chord with me, and I'm sure our viewers this afternoon. You put out something about why we don't value education. 2, you wanted to reinstate a universal draft. And 3, why there are too many choices for kids out there. Why, not so much why they're given choices, it's just what's available to them. You said in this article, in this newsletter, about why we don't value education. As a society, we really don't, despite all the reasons we should, value education anymore. With looming budget cuts, our military numbers will shrink even more. So if we don't have this pool of talent to look to, how do we incentivize large numbers of our fellow citizens to achieve a higher level of education? Who are you going after in this specifically?
Well, I think a number of different places, but it's really a public policy issue. I don't think we do value education. We say we do. We give a lot of lip service to it. And of course, we spend a lot of money on it. But right now, we're in one of those periods in American history where we're kind of an anti-intellectual movement. We decry someone from being elite. And if we mean that from a money perspective or a family perspective, that's different. But what we're really meaning is we don't value those people who got an education and went on to do important things with that education.
We scoff at their success?
We really do. We tear down. And we've had people running for the highest offices in the land who have looked down their nose at people who were well educated and were using that education. And that's a problem.
But this goes beyond political lines, does it not?
Yeah, it is not an R or a D issue. It's across the board.
Yeah.
Listen to the radio talk shows, and you'll really get a huge dose of that decrying or this what I call an anti-intellectualism.
Yeah.
And I think we need to change that. We need to raise everybody's level of expectation about their educational attainment. And I'm not saying everyone should go to college. I don't believe that. I know that's not possible. But everyone should have an ambition to be a lifelong learner and to learn more. And it's actually the basis for economic development. And we see this over and over in our society and in our country and in the world. China, India, Brazil are getting what we are losing here. They are getting this need to develop the intellectual capabilities of their constituents. Brazil is sending, over the next couple of years, over 100,000 students to the United States to have a glimpse of U.S. higher education. The Brazilian government and the business community in Brazil are paying for that.
You know, one of the things, and I know you've had kind of a view from both sides, a law degree yourself, looking at the business world, and then you get into education, but is there a melding there you have learned over the last decade or so in the business of education and how people, you mentioned the fact maybe not everybody can afford to get more education, but if they do have to get more education, I guess my question is how? What is the key to that success?
Well, I think everyone can afford it. I think there's a lot of myths about the cost right now, and that's being piled on,
Yeah.
especially issues around debt burden and whatever. However, the key is that everyone needs to desire to be better educated and to have education all of their life. Not just go to school, get a piece of paper that is a diploma or a degree, but in fact be a lifelong learner. That's the key. When you take a look at in areas of our country where the economy is booming, the Bostons and Austins and Silicon Valleys, those areas of economic development are all hinged around brain gain, are all hinged around the knowledge economy. Tom Friedman, New York Times, is right. The world is flat, and the flatness is around education. Not everyone's going to be a PhD. Not everyone is going to get a bachelor's degree. But everyone can and should enhance whatever level of education they currently have. We've got a little program we've been doing called Books at Work, trying to get people who may not even have high school diplomas to read good literature.
You pulled out a statistic to me in our pre-interview when we were talking, and you were saying how in the 11.5 million people that are here in the state of Ohio, only 10% actually have bachelor's degree?
We know about 25%
Okay.
have bachelor's degree, but there's almost 10%
that went one
that
year.
went to college somewhere,
Yes.
somewhere, but only stayed 1 year or even less than 1 year. And the only thing those people got out of that 1 year was debt. You know, they didn't become lifelong learners. It didn't help them get a job. It didn't help them improve in their existing career, and it didn't help them live inside their own head.
We have this quick fix mentality, and I posed to you, I said maybe this is more of a society based on this idea that I can't do the higher education thing, I can't get more learning because it's not quick enough.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if that's a generalization that's unfair, but it just seems that this is a timing thing. Do
Jeff,
do you read that?
Yeah, I do. I think that's
You sit down with
right.
students all the time. You have meetings with students every week.
We have a lot of kids who don't want to defer gratification at all. And part of the debt problem for students in college is because they're not just spending or taking out loans to pay the tuition, room, board, and fees, but they're also buying a car, getting married, having kids, doing all kinds of life things that they don't want to defer during that 4 years that it normally takes you to get to that college degree.
Yeah.
And that's a sea change in what is going on. By happenstance, Time Magazine, current issue, has an article about this generation, the millennials, the me generation, and I find that to be very true. We are seeing more and more young people come to even a school like Hiram, which is reasonably selective, and they are not interested in deferring the gratification to really work hard for 4 years to get the degree. And so we have to struggle even harder to keep them in school. It's all about persistence.
Almost 1,400 students currently, correct?
Yeah, and we're going to grow over the next few years. We'll be doing a lot of things. We've started a number of partnership programs with community colleges, and we're going to begin outreaching into digital education, some of the online work.
From valuing education to reinstating a universal draft. That was something you said in the newsletter. You said this probably is not going to set well with a lot of moms out there, but you said perhaps deferring gratification, which you bring up earlier, and making a contribution would help us reinstill a passion for both learning and moving up, succeeding. In the military, as you're referring to, I would assume, and also in life, as it once did. The generation of today, as you said, Time Magazine bringing up the me generation, but the days of our fathers growing up and our fathers' fathers growing up, looking at that time and what life meant and how your life was going to play out, that has changed. We all grow, we all adapt. But you're saying there should be a piece of yesteryear in today that's not there?
Well, I think we see historically that young people have really often, in a way, not understand where they are going after they get out of high school. They don't have an ambition. And I think that, unfortunately, we're in some ways forcing kids to grow up too soon, but not giving them enough responsibility even while they're going through grade school and high school. They've been supervised by adults all their lives, and they have not valued their own independence, and they haven't been allowed to make mistakes. So I'm suggesting, I suggested in the newsletter, not just universal military service, but a universal service. We obviously don't want to have a military today that has 4 million 18-year-olds in it. That doesn't make any sense for us as a military. But we could,
and we can't afford it right now.
That's also true. But we certainly could think about universal service, where part of that might be military, but also the reinvigorating the old Civilian Conservation Corps, doing a lot of things.
Redefining a draft.
Redefining it, giving people an opportunity for some universal service, help these young folks find themselves, mature a little, be a bit on their own, have to see how life is outside of the cocoon that so many have grown up in.
And I have to point out, a number of schools, especially religious schools, high schools, they have service projects that the students have to fulfill, but you're saying even beyond that.
Well, that's right. And, you know, I think it would be valuable for young people to have this opportunity. There's another area that's really important from a societal point of view. I think we're disintegrating ourselves, and it's mostly around class and money. I'm not talking just race here, but really class and money. We know all the figures about how the top 1% are so much, have so much greater economic wealth than the bottom 99%. Well, this is turning into a disintegration, and I think it would be useful for young people across the board to come into contact with people who were not like them. They do this in college, but unfortunately not everyone goes to college. But increasingly we are seeing ourselves separating and not participating in groups and group activities, and not having that interaction that you used to get.
Tom, this starts as early as, you know, grade school, and cliques forming, and of course kids gravitate towards those who are like them, right?
Well, and you see with problems that we have in public K through 12, with so many people sending their kids to private schools or self-selecting to go to a charter school, all of this is disintegrating. I'm not saying it's all bad, it's a fact, it's what is happening, but can we do something about that to reintegrate young people and have them have the opportunity like the military used to do? The military itself is actually way less integrated today than it was even during the Vietnam era, for example.
You've touched on kids having too many choices in that, but you also point out, you said reinstill a passion for moving up.
Yes, yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think, again, Time magazine, this issue that's out on the newsstands today, it talks about this too. There's not a lot of ambition.
Are kids happy with the status quo?
Yeah, there's a statistic, and of course, you know, 89% of all statistics are made up.
Right.
But there's a stat in this article that suggests that in just 10 years, there has been a 20% decline in young people's ambition. They did some measure about, would you rather have a more responsible job? And 80% of kids 10 years ago said yes to that. Only 60% did today.
There are job applications out there right now. I've talked to folks who have said they've had to answer questions that have them go one way or the other. A series of questions asking them one way or the other, and that's measuring just those kind of factors.
Exactly, and what we're seeing is a lack of ambition. And I think in part is because people haven't had an opportunity to try things. I go back to some pretty simple analogies. We'll come back to sort of the sports facilities and using a sports analogy. You know, T-ball, I think, is not a good thing. everyone gets to hit a home run, everyone gets to run the bases, everyone gets a trophy. Just for showing up, you
Sure.
get an award, and that's not the way life is. In the real world, it is a meritocracy. It's what you can do, it's what you can produce, it's what you can give to society. I happen to think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But we have created this generation, this young group of people that are coming into college today and have been in college the last several years, who we were really worried about their self-image, and I think we did unintentionally some things that hurt that. So those kids never had a chance to pick up the team. They never had the responsibility of deciding whether the ball was fair or foul. It was always an adult umpire deciding whether the ball was fair or foul. So then you get into a situation in life, whether it be college or whatever the atmosphere.
They're wondering where the ribbon is.
That's right.
Yeah. Tom, stay right there. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about the city of Toledo.
Okay.
From afar, what you see here, what's working, what isn't. We'll be back right after this.